The stars had seen many empires rise and fall, but none had been as cruel as the Verith Dominion. For 10,000 years, the Verith had conquered everything in their path. They had destroyed 63 species. They had burned worlds and enslaved billions. Their emperor, Kalos Verith, was over 1,000 years old. He had never known defeat. He had never known fear. To him, other species were nothing more than insects waiting to be crushed. So when the small blue planet called Earth refused to join the Galactic Concord, Emperor Kalos saw it as an insult. The Concord was a union of 4,000 spacefaring civilizations. Every species that reached the stars eventually joined. It was safer that way. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the Verith were the most dangerous thing in it. But humans said no. They had expanded to 17 colony worlds. They had built ships and stations. Yet they kept to themselves. They traded little. They shared nothing. They simply existed, quiet, alone, watching. The Concord ambassadors thought humans were foolish. Some thought they were afraid. A few old species whispered different theories, but no one listened to them. Emperor Kalos decided to teach humanity a lesson. He sent his finest armada. 3,000 warships crossed the void of space toward Earth's solar system. Each ship was a mountain of metal and fire. Each one had destroyed worlds before. The fleet was led by the Emperor himself aboard his flagship, the Divine Fury. It was the largest warship ever built. Its weapons could crack a moon in half. The Galactic Concord sent observers to watch. They set up a monitoring station at the edge of the solar system. Ambassadors from hundreds of species gathered to witness what they believed would be humanity's last day. "Such a waste," said Ambassador Trell of the Novari. She was a tall being with silver skin and sad eyes. "They could have simply joined us. Now they will burn." "They were arrogant," replied Ambassador Crix of the Moldari. He had no sympathy for humans. "Arrogance has a price." The Verith fleet entered the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. They passed the outer planets without slowing down. Their sensors swept across human stations and settlements. Everything they saw confirmed what they already believed. Human technology was primitive. Human defenses were weak. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. Emperor Kalos stood on the bridge of the Divine Fury. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars from 100 conquests. His 4 eyes burned with cold amusement. He had done this so many times before. The script never changed. First came the ultimatum. Then came the begging. Then came the fire. He opened a channel to Earth. "People of Earth," his voice echoed across the planet. "You have 1 hour to surrender. Send your leaders to kneel before me. Give us your resources, your technology, and your obedience. Do this, and some of you may live. Refuse, and your world will become ash. Your children will become slaves. Your history will be forgotten. You have 1 hour." The message ended. The Emperor leaned back in his throne and waited for the panic to begin. But there was no panic. Earth was silent. The Emperor frowned. His officers checked their equipment. The transmission had been received. Every human on the planet had heard his words. Yet there was no response. No terrified leaders begging for mercy. No military channels exploding with desperate orders. Nothing. Just silence. "Perhaps they are too afraid to speak," suggested General Voy, the Emperor's most trusted commander. "Perhaps," the Emperor agreed. But something felt wrong. He had conquered 63 species. He knew what fear looked like. This was not fear. This was something else. He shook off the feeling. It did not matter. Humanity's silence would not save them. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Destroy their orbital stations. Show them we are not patient. The fleet opened fire. Plasma lances cut through space like burning spears. They struck the human stations in orbit around Earth. Metal melted. Structures collapsed. Debris rained down toward the planet below. At the Concorde monitoring station, the ambassadors watched in grim silence. Some looked away. Others recorded everything. This was history. Dark history, but history nonetheless. "It is done," Ambassador Crick said. "Humanity will surrender now." But humanity did not surrender. Instead, something strange happened. Across the solar system, human colonies went dark. Not destroyed. Their power signatures simply vanished. One by one, 17 worlds fell silent. "What is happening?" Ambassador Trell asked. Her instruments showed nothing. It was as if the colonies had never existed. On the Divine Fury, General Vorm reported the same thing to the Emperor. "My lord, we are losing contact with our scouts. Something is interfering with our sensors." Emperor Kalos stood up slowly. For the first time in centuries, he felt a cold sensation in his chest. It was unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, in a facility that had not been used for 300 years, Admiral Chen Wei stood before a console. Red lights blinked across the panel. Behind her, 100 officers worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They had prayed it would never come. Now it was here. Admiral Chen was 60 years old. Her hair was gray, and her face was lined with years of worry. She had commanded Earth's secret defense force for 2 decades. She knew what humanity had built. She knew what they were capable of. And she knew that once they revealed their true strength, nothing would ever be the same. She looked at the main screen. It showed the Vareth fleet in orbit. 3,000 ships. Millions of soldiers. An emperor who had never lost. He was about to lose now. She pressed her hand against the console. A scanner read her palm. A voice recognition system waited for her words. "Prometheus Protocol," she said quietly. "Authorization Chunwei Alpha 77. Confirm activation." The system processed her command. Across the solar system, hidden machines began to wake. Power flowed through circuits that had been dormant for centuries. Weapons that should not exist began to charge. Admiral Chun closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the lives that would end today. Not human lives. Vareth lives. Millions of them. They had come to destroy her world. They had come to enslave her people. They would receive no mercy. She opened her eyes and spoke into her comm. "All stations, this is Admiral Chun. The enemy is here. They have made their choice. Now we make ours." She paused. "God forgive us all." Above Earth, the Vareth fleet continued its bombardment, unaware that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The silence was about to end, and the galaxy would never forget what came next. The Concorde ambassadors stared at their screens in confusion. Something was wrong with their sensors. The readings made no sense. "This equipment must be broken," Ambassador Crix muttered. He tapped his console with growing frustration. These energy signatures cannot be real. But the equipment was not broken, and the signatures were very real. Across the solar system, space itself seemed to shimmer and twist. In places that had appeared empty moments before, massive structures began to appear. They materialized like ghosts becoming solid, their cloaking fields dissolving to reveal what had been hidden for 3 centuries. Ambassador Trell felt her blood turn cold. She had studied human history. She had read about their wars, their struggles, their capacity for both creation and destruction. She had always believed that humanity was a young species with great potential but limited power. She had been wrong. "What are those?" she whispered. The answer came from the oldest ambassador in the room. He was from the Luminari, a species so ancient that they had watched stars form and die. He rarely spoke, but now his voice cut through the silence like a knife. Those are what humanity has been building while the galaxy ignored them. Those are what they hid from us. Those are the reason they stayed alone. The structures were battle stations. Thousands of them. They hung in space like metal flowers of death, each one bristling with weapons that the Concord had never seen before. The sensors counted them one by one. When the counting stopped, the number was 12,000. 12,000 battle stations, hidden in folded space, waiting. But that was not the worst part. On the bridge of the Divine Fury, Emperor Kalos watched his tactical display with growing horror. His officers were shouting. His commanders were screaming orders. But nothing could prepare them for what emerged from the asteroid belt. They were ships. But calling them ships was like calling an ocean a puddle. They were mountains. They were moons. They were weapons of such scale that the Emperor's mind struggled to comprehend them. 7 of them. Each one the size of a small moon. Each one covered in weapons that glowed with terrible energy. Each one moving toward the Vareth fleet with slow, unstoppable purpose. What are those things? General Vorn asked. His voice was barely a whisper. The Emperor said nothing. He could not speak. For the first time in 1,000 years, he understood what his victims had felt when they saw his fleet appear in their skies. He understood their terror, their hopelessness, their despair. Now he was the victim. The human ships had names. Humanity called them Titans. They had built them over 200 years, hiding them inside hollowed-out asteroids. Each Titan carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Each one was crewed by 10,000 soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. And now all 7 of them were awake. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display from her command center. The Vareth fleet had stopped firing. They were frozen in place, trying to understand what was happening. She could imagine their confusion, their fear. She felt no sympathy. These creatures had destroyed 63 species. They had enslaved billions. They had come to her world to do the same thing. They had attacked her stations. They had killed her people. Now they would learn why humanity had stayed quiet for so long. She opened the communication channel. Her voice reached every ship in the Vareth fleet. It reached the Concord monitoring station. It reached every corner of the solar system. This is Admiral Chun Wei of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our home with weapons drawn. You attacked our stations. You threatened our children. You gave us 1 hour to surrender. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was cold as space itself. Your hour is over. You were warned. You chose violence. Now witness consequence. Emperor Kalos heard her words. He heard the calm in her voice. And in that moment, he understood something terrible. Humanity had not been afraid. Humanity had not been hiding from the galaxy because they were weak. They had been hiding because they knew what they were. They knew what they could do. And they had hoped, desperately hoped, that they would never have to show it. The Vareth had forced their hand. All ships! The Emperor shouted. Full retreat. Jump to hyperspace, now. But it was too late. Across the solar system, the jump points began to collapse. Space folded in ways that made travel impossible. The Vareth sensors screamed warnings. Every exit was closed. Every escape route was blocked. They were trapped. At the Concord monitoring station, Ambassador Trull understood what was happening. Humanity had developed fold space technology that the galaxy had only theorized about. They could bend space itself. They could create and destroy pathways through the void. and they had just sealed the Vareth fleet inside a cage with no doors. "They cannot escape," she said softly. "No one can escape." The Luminori ambassador nodded slowly. "Now you understand. Humanity did not join the Concord because they did not need protection. They stayed alone because they knew that if anyone threatened them, they would respond not with defense, but with annihilation." The 12,000 battle stations moved into position. They formed a perfect sphere around the Vareth fleet. The 7 Titans took their places at strategic points. Every weapon powered up to full capacity. 3,000 Vareth ships hung in the center of the sphere. They were surrounded. They were outgunned. They were utterly doomed. General Vaughn looked at his emperor with desperate eyes. "My lord, what do we do?" Emperor Kalos stared at the tactical display. He saw the weapons pointed at his fleet. He saw the power readings that defied everything he knew about physics. He saw the calm, methodical positioning of human forces. This was not a battle. This was an execution. He had done the same thing to so many others. He had surrounded helpless enemies. He had watched them beg for mercy. He had smiled as they burned. Now he was surrounded. Now he was helpless. Now he would burn. "There is nothing we can do," he said. His voice was empty, dead. "We woke something that should have stayed sleeping. Now we will pay the price." On the command deck of Titan 01, Commander Marcus Stone watched the Vareth fleet through the main screen. He was a large man with kind eyes and steady hands. He had 3 children on Earth. He had grandchildren. He had hoped to never use the weapons under his command. But he would use them now, without hesitation, without mercy. He looked at his crew. They were ready. They had trained for this moment since childhood. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night. It had all led to this. "All stations report ready," his tactical officer announced. Commander Stone nodded. He opened a channel to Admiral Chun. "Titan 01 ready for engagement." One by one, the other Titans reported the same. Then the battle stations. Then the hidden defense platforms. 12,000 voices confirming readiness. Admiral Chun listened to them all. When the last report came in, she took a deep breath. "All units," she said. "Weapons free." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. And then the killing began. The first shot came from Titan 03. It was not plasma. It was not a missile. It was not anything the galaxy had ever seen before. A beam of pure white light cut through space, silent and terrible. It struck a Vareth cruiser in the center of the fleet. The cruiser did not explode. It did not burn. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment there was nothing. Not even dust. Not even atoms. The ship and its 10,000 crew members were erased from reality. At the Concord monitoring station, Ambassador Trull stared at her sensors in disbelief. That is impossible. Matter cannot simply disappear. But it had. And it was only the beginning. The battle lasted 14 minutes. Later, historians would study every second. They would write books about it. They would call it the 14-minute war. They would try to explain how 3,000 warships, the mightiest fleet in galactic history, were completely destroyed in less time than it takes to cook a meal. They would never fully understand. In the first 2 minutes, the Titans fired their main weapons. These were antimatter cannons of a design that no other species had ever imagined. They did not simply damage their targets. They unmade them at the atomic level. Matter was converted into energy, and that energy was scattered across space as harmless light. Ship after ship vanished. The Vareth captains watched their comrades disappear. They tried to fight back. They fired every weapon they had. Plasma lances, nuclear missiles, energy beams, All of it struck the Titans without effect. The human ships had shields that absorbed everything thrown at them. "Focus fire on the nearest Titan," General Vaughn screamed. "Concentrate all weapons." 100 Vareth ships turned their guns on Titan 07. They fired together. A storm of destructive energy slammed into the human vessel. The light was blinding. The power was enough to destroy a continent. When the light faded, Titan 07 was undamaged. Not even scratched. "That is impossible," General Vaughn whispered. "Nothing can survive that." But the Titans were not ordinary ships. They were humanity's answer to every threat the universe could offer. Their hulls were made from materials that the Concord had never discovered. Their shields bent space itself, redirecting energy away before it could make contact. They were unstoppable. By minute 5, half the Vareth fleet was gone. The remaining ships scattered, trying to find some way to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The fold space barriers held firm. Every direction led back to the killing ground. Some captains tried to surrender. They broadcast messages of peace. They begged for mercy. Their signals went unanswered. The human weapons kept firing. Admiral Chun watched the destruction from her command center. Her face showed no emotion. She had given the Vareth a chance to leave. She had warned them. They had chosen to attack anyway. Now there was no stopping until the job was done. This was not cruelty. This was survival. If any Vareth ship escaped, they would return with more forces. The Vareth would never stop. They had proven that with 63 other species. The only way to end the threat was total elimination. At minute 6, the battle stations joined the attack. 12,000 platforms opened fire simultaneously. The precision was perfect. Each station targeted a specific ship. Each shot hit exactly where it was meant to hit. The Vareth fleet had used formation tactics to protect their weaker vessels with their stronger ones. It did not matter. The human weapons punched through battleships like they were paper. They ignored shields. They melted armor. They turned proud warships into expanding clouds of gas. Emperor Kalos stood on his bridge, surrounded by chaos. Officers ran in every direction. Alarms screamed. The tactical display showed red dots disappearing one by one. Each dot was a ship. Each ship held thousands of lives. "We must do something," General Vaughn shouted. "There must be a way." But there was no way. The Emperor understood this now. He had conquered 63 species. He had watched them struggle and fail against his overwhelming force. Now he was the one struggling. Now he was the one failing. The universe had a sense of justice after all. By minute 9, only 500 Vareth ships remained. They clustered together, their weapons pointed outward, their shields overlapping. It was a defensive formation that had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. The Titans responded by simply increasing their fire rate. The defensive formation held for 11 seconds. Then it collapsed as ships were picked off one by one. Emperor Kalos made a decision. If he was going to die, he would die striking at his enemy. He would die with honor. "All remaining ships follow me," he broadcast. "We will ram Earth itself. If we are to fall, we will take them with us." 300 ships answered his call. They broke from the formation and accelerated toward Earth. Their engines burned at maximum power. They did not care about survival. They cared only about vengeance. Titan 07 moved to intercept. It positioned itself directly in the path of the charging fleet. Commander Sarah Wong stood on its bridge, watching the approaching ships. "They are going to ram us," her tactical officer reported. Commander Wong nodded. "Let them try." The Divine Fury led the charge. Emperor Kalos stood at the front of his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his screen. Behind Earth, he could see Titan 07 approaching. It was trying to block his path. He would go through it. All power to forward shields. He commanded. Full speed. The Divine Fury was the largest warship in the Vareth fleet. It was 1 kilometer long and half a kilometer wide. It was built to survive impacts that would destroy other vessels. It struck Titan 07 at full speed. The impact was spectacular. Metal screamed. Energy flared. The Divine Fury crumpled like a paper cup hitting a stone wall. The Emperor's flagship, his pride, his symbol of power, folded in on itself and broke apart. Titan 07 did not move. The impact had left a small dent in its hull. Nothing more. The other charging ships suffered similar fates. Some were destroyed by weapons fire before they could reach their targets. Others collided with Titans and shattered. None reached Earth. At minute 13, the last Vareth combat ship was destroyed. Only escape pods remained, drifting through a sea of debris that had once been the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. Admiral Chun found Emperor Kalos in one of those pods. He survived the destruction of his flagship. His 4 eyes stared blankly at the destruction around him. His ritual scars, marks of his many conquests, now seemed like symbols of his failure. She opened a channel to his pod. Emperor Kalos, she said, your fleet is destroyed. Your invasion has failed. I am giving you one chance to send a message to your homeworld. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what we are capable of. Do this, and I will let your survivors live. The Emperor heard her words. He understood their meaning. She was offering mercy. After everything he had done, after all the species he had destroyed, she was offering mercy. He did not deserve it. He knew this. What are you? He asked. His voice was broken, defeated. What kind of creatures could do this? Admiral Chun considered the question. We are humanity, she answered. And we remember every species you exterminated. We remember every world you burned. We remember every child you enslaved. Consider your debt collected. At minute 14, the last weapon fell silent. The battle was over. 3,000 warships and millions of Vareth soldiers were gone. Erased from existence in the time it took to drink a cup of coffee. At the Concord monitoring station, the ambassadors sat in stunned silence. They had just witnessed the impossible. They had just watched an empire's entire military force vanish in 14 minutes. Ambassador Trell was the first to speak. What happens now? The Luminari ambassador answered. Now humanity shows us what they do to those who threaten their world. And the galaxy will learn to fear a species that has no desire to be feared. In the debris field above Earth, 7 Titans turned toward the edge of the solar system. Their drives powered up. Space folded around them. They had another appointment. The Vareth homeworld was 200 light years away. Its 40 billion inhabitants had no idea what was coming. They would learn soon enough. The Vareth homeworld was called Kareth Prime. It was a massive planet, twice the size of Earth, with purple skies and silver oceans. 40 billion Vareth lived there. They had built great cities that stretched to the clouds. They had constructed monuments to their emperors that could be seen from space. They believed they were the masters of the galaxy. They were about to learn otherwise. The alarms began at midday. Every military station on the planet detected the same thing. 7 massive signatures had appeared in orbit. 7 objects that had not been there one moment and were there the next. The Titans had arrived. General Kroth, the commander of Kareth Prime's defense forces, stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had received the message from Emperor Kalos just hours ago. He had heard the description of what happened to the fleet. He had not believed it. Now he believed. All defense platforms, open fire. He commanded. Destroy those ships. Kareth Prime had 3,000 orbital defense platforms. They were the most powerful fixed weapons in the Vareth Dominion. They had protected the homeworld for 10,000 years. No enemy had ever survived their fire. They all fired at once. 3,000 beams of plasma and nuclear fire streaked toward the Titans. The energy was enough to crack a moon. It struck the human ships with devastating force. The Titans did not even slow down. Their shields absorbed everything. The most powerful weapons the Vareth had ever built were useless, harmless, meaningless. General Krath felt his heart stop. That is impossible. But it was not impossible. It was simply beyond Vareth understanding. Humanity had built these ships to survive anything the universe could throw at them. The combined might of Kareth Prime's defenses was nothing compared to what the Titans were designed to endure. On Titan 01, Commander Marcus Stone looked down at the purple planet below. He saw the cities. He saw the monuments. He saw the 40 billion lives that lived there. He thought about what the Vareth had done to other species. The burning worlds. The enslaved children. The extinction of entire civilizations. Part of him wanted to destroy this planet the same way they had destroyed so many others. But humanity was not like the Vareth. They would not become the monsters they were fighting. All Titans, begin targeted strikes, he ordered. Military installations only. No civilian targets. No unnecessary deaths. The order went out to all 7 ships. And then the Titans opened fire. But they did not bomb cities. They did not destroy homes. Their weapons struck with surgical precision, hitting only military targets. Orbital platforms vanished. Shipyards melted. Weapons factories crumbled. Military academies were reduced to rubble. Across the planet, the Vareth military machine began to collapse. Bases that had stood for thousands of years were destroyed in seconds. Ships that were still being built were erased before they could launch. Training grounds where future soldiers learned to fight were turned into smoking craters. And it was not just Kareth Prime. Across the 200 systems of the Vareth Dominion, more human ships appeared. Not Titans, but smaller vessels that humanity had kept hidden even longer. They emerged from fold space at every Vareth military installation in the Empire. And they began the same process of systematic destruction. In 14 minutes, the same amount of time it had taken to destroy the invasion fleet, humanity dismantled 10,000 years of Vareth military power. Every weapon, every shipyard, every factory, every training facility, all of it was gone. The Vareth Dominion still existed. Its people still lived. Its cities still stood. But its ability to make war was completely destroyed. On Kareth Prime, the citizens watched in terror as their orbital defenses fell silent one by one. They waited for the bombardment that would surely follow. They waited for their cities to burn. They waited for their children to die. The bombardment never came. Instead, a human ship descended through the atmosphere and landed in the central plaza of the capital city. Its doors opened, and a single human stepped out. His name was Ambassador David Chun, brother of Admiral Chun Wei. He was a tall man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He wore no armor. He carried no weapons. He walked alone into a crowd of millions of Vareth who had every reason to kill him. They did not touch him. They were too shocked, too confused, too afraid. Ambassador Chen walked to the steps of the Imperial Palace, where the Vareth government had gathered. He looked up at the frightened officials and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "People of the Vareth Dominion, I come with a message from humanity." The crowd was silent. Every eye was fixed on this strange, fearless creature. "Your emperor attacked our world. Your fleet tried to destroy our planet. Your soldiers planned to enslave our children. We had every right to destroy you in return. We had every right to burn your cities and end your species forever." He paused. The silence was absolute. We chose not to. A murmur ran through the crowd. Disbelief, confusion, hope. "We have destroyed your weapons. We have dismantled your war machine. You will never threaten another species again. But we have not touched your homes. We have not harmed your families. We have not killed your future." He gestured toward the sky, where the Titans still hung in silent orbit. "Those ships will remain here, hidden, watching. If you try to rebuild your military, we will know. If you try to attack anyone, we will stop you. This is not negotiable. This is your reality now." The Verith officials listened. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. Some simply looked tired. Ambassador Chung continued. "But this reality does not have to be a prison. It can be a new beginning. You spent 10,000 years building weapons. You spent 10,000 years conquering and destroying. Now you have a choice." He pointed at the great monuments that surrounded the plaza. "Build schools instead of fortresses. Build hospitals instead of warships. Build art instead of weapons. Show the galaxy that you can be more than conquerors. Show us that you can be neighbors." He stepped closer to the officials, his voice softening. "We do not hate you. We do not want revenge. We want peace. Real peace. The kind of peace where your children and our children can grow up without fear. You have one chance to create that peace. We suggest you take it." He turned and walked back to his ship. No one stopped him. No one spoke. The crowd simply watched as this strange human who had spared their world climbed aboard his vessel and flew away. Far away, at the Concord monitoring station, the ambassadors had watched everything. They had seen the military strikes. They had heard the ambassador's speech. They had witnessed humanity spare an enemy that had shown no mercy to anyone. Ambassador Trell shook her head slowly. "I do not understand. They had the power to destroy the Verith completely. Why did they show mercy?" The Luminari ambassador answered. "Because that is what separates humanity from the Verith. The Verith use power to destroy. Humanity used power to create a choice. They gave the Verith a chance to become something better. And if the Verith refuse?" Ambassador Crix asked. "Then humanity will be watching, and the Verith will learn that mercy has limits." Back on Karath Prime, the sun was setting over the capital city. The sky was filled with smoke from the destroyed military installations. But the city itself was intact. The people were alive. Their children were safe. In the Imperial Palace, what remained of the Varith government held an emergency meeting. They argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to secretly rebuild their military. Others wanted to attack human colonies in revenge. A few quietly suggested that maybe, just maybe, the humans were right. Finally, an old minister stood up. He had lived for 800 years. He had seen the Varith at the height of their power, and he had just watched that power disappear in 14 minutes. "We have two choices," he said. "We can fight and die, or we can change and live. I have seen enough death. I vote for change." The vote was close, but in the end, change won. The Verith Dominion was over. A new chapter was beginning, and humanity watched from the shadows, hoping that this time peace would last. 1 year had passed since the 14-minute war. The galaxy was a different place now. The old galactic concord had dissolved in the weeks following humanity's victory. 4,000 species had watched the most powerful military force in history disappear in the time it takes to eat breakfast. They had seen weapons that should not exist. They had witnessed power that made their own technology look like children's toys. They were terrified. Some species wanted to attack humanity before humanity could attack them. They argued that Earth was too dangerous to exist. They demanded preemptive strikes against human colonies. They believed that the only safety was in humanity's destruction. They were fools. Ambassador Trell of the Navari had seen the truth. She had watched the battle. She had witnessed the aftermath. She understood something that the frightened species did not. Humanity had not destroyed the Verith because they wanted power. They had not built the Titans because they wanted to conquer. They had created those weapons because they were afraid. Afraid of exactly what had happened. Afraid of species like the Verith coming to their world and destroying everything they loved. Humanity was not a threat. Humanity was a shield. She traveled to Earth to propose an alliance. She was the first alien to set foot on human soil since the war. She expected to find a planet preparing for more conquest. She expected to see factories building weapons. She expected to meet leaders planning their next campaign. She found something very different. Earth was peaceful. Its cities were full of people living normal lives. Children went to school. Parents went to work. Old people sat in parks and watched the clouds. There were no victory parades. There were no monuments to the war. There were no celebrations of Earth deaths. The humans wanted to forget. Admiral Chen Wei met Ambassador Trell at the landing site. The admiral looked tired. Her eyes carried a weight that had not been there before the war. She had ordered the deaths of millions. Even though those millions had been enemies, even though they had been trying to destroy her world, the weight of those deaths sat heavy on her soul. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador," she said. "I hope you come in peace." Trell noticed that the admiral was not wearing a uniform. She was dressed in simple civilian clothes. There were no guards around her. No weapons visible. Just an old woman standing in a garden. "I come with a proposal," Trell said. "The Concord has collapsed. The galaxy is in chaos. We need leadership. We need someone to show us a new way forward." Admiral Chen smiled sadly. "And you think that should be us? The species that just erased an empire in 14 minutes? Yes, because you showed that power does not have to mean cruelty. You could have destroyed the Verith completely. You did not. That is the kind of leadership the galaxy needs." The admiral was quiet for a long moment. She looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted peacefully overhead. Somewhere up there, the Titans were hidden, watching, waiting. She hoped they would never be needed again. "We will help," she finally said. "But we will not lead. Leadership means power, and power corrupts. We have seen what happens to species that accumulate too much power. They become like the Verith. We will not become that." And so a new alliance was born. Not the old Concord, where species competed for influence and power. Something different. The Concord of Sentience, it was called. Its principles were simple. No aggressive expansion. No conquest. No slavery. Protection for developing species. Justice for those who committed war crimes. Humanity took a seat at the table, but they did not sit at the head. They offered advice. They shared technology. They helped write the new laws. But they refused to rule. Some species did not understand. They saw humanity's power and wondered why they did not use it. They saw the Titans and wondered why they were not conquering the galaxy. They saw the weapons and wondered why they were not pointed at new targets. They did not understand that this was exactly why humanity had hidden for so long. On Kareth Prime, the Verith were changing. It was slow. It was painful. Thousands of years of military culture could not be erased in a single year. Many Verith still hated humanity. Many still dreamed of revenge. But they could not act on those dreams. The human monitoring systems watched everything. Any attempt to build weapons was stopped before it began. Some Verith turned their energy to other things. Scientists who had designed weapons now designed medical equipment. Engineers who had built warships now built bridges. Artists who had created propaganda now created beauty. A new generation of Vareth children was growing up. They had never known the old empire. They had never seen the conquest fleets. They had only heard stories about the 14 minutes that changed everything. To them, the old ways were history. The new ways were simply how things were. There was hope, small hope, fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. Admiral Chen Wei retired from military service 6 months after the war. She could not bear the weight of command anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Vareth ships disappearing. She heard the silence of millions of lives ending. She felt the terrible ease of destruction. She became a teacher instead. She founded a school for military officers, but it was not a school that taught tactics and weapons. It was a school that taught ethics, philosophy, the meaning of power and the responsibility that came with it. Power without restraint is just another form of tyranny, she told her students. We did not defeat the Vareth to become them. We defeated them so that no one would have to be them. Remember this, always. The Titans were moved to deep space, hidden once more. Their crews were released from service and returned to normal lives. The weapons that had ended an empire gathered dust in the darkness between stars. Humanity hoped they would never be needed again. 5 years later, a young Vareth girl named Sira walked through the gardens of what had once been a military academy. It was now a museum, dedicated to the history of the Vareth people. Not just the conquests, not just the victories. All of it, the good and the bad, the pride and the shame. Her grandmother walked beside her, holding her small hand. "Grandmother," Sira asked, "what happened to the old empire? The one in the stories?" The grandmother looked at the statues around them. They showed Vareth leaders from throughout history. Some had been conquerors. Some had been tyrants. Some had been heroes. All of them were part of who the Vareth had been. "We thought we were gods," the grandmother said softly. "We thought nothing could stop us. We took what we wanted and destroyed anyone who stood in our way. What changed?" Sira asked. The grandmother pointed at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear in the evening darkness. "We met something that reminded us we were not gods. We were just another species in a galaxy full of species. No more special than anyone else. No more powerful than anyone else. We had simply never met anyone who could prove it." "The humans," Sira said. She had learned about them in school. Yes, the humans. They could have destroyed us. They had every reason to destroy us. But they gave us a choice instead. They gave us a chance to become something better. Sira thought about this. "Are we better now?" The grandmother smiled. It was a sad smile, full of memories and regrets. But there was hope in it too. "We are trying. That is all anyone can do. Try to be better. Try to learn from our mistakes. Try to build something worth keeping." She squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "Promise me you will keep trying. Promise me you will remember what we were and choose to be something different." Sira nodded solemnly. "I promise, grandmother." They walked together through the garden as the stars came out. 2 generations of Vareth facing a future that their ancestors could never have imagined. In the Concord of Sentience official historical archive, there is an entry about humanity. It is studied by scholars across 4,000 worlds. It tries to explain what happened during the 14-minute war and why it mattered. The entry ends with a quote from a human ambassador, spoken during the first meeting of the new Concord. Someone had asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Why had humanity hidden their strength for so long? Why had they pretended to be weak when they were so powerful? The ambassador had thought about the question for a long time before answering. "We did not hide because we were weak. he finally said. We hid because we knew what we were capable of. We understood our own potential for destruction. We had seen what power could do when it was used without wisdom, without restraint, without compassion. We had seen it in our own history. We did not want to add to the galaxy's suffering. We wanted to be left alone to build something good. He paused, and his eyes were sad. But we also knew that someday, someone would force us to reveal what we had built. Someone would threaten our children. Someone would try to destroy our home. And when that day came, we would respond with everything we had. He looked around the room at the assembled ambassadors from across the galaxy. We were terrified of that day. Not because we feared losing. We feared winning. We feared becoming the monsters we were built to destroy. And now that day has come and gone. We won. The Verith are defeated. And every day since, we have asked ourselves the same question. His voice dropped to a whisper. Did we become the monsters? Or did we stop them? The entry in the archive has no conclusion. Scholars still debate the answer to that question. Some say humanity showed that power could be used responsibly. Others say that the destruction of the Verith fleet was monstrous no matter the justification. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps that is the point. Power is neither good nor evil. It is simply power. What matters is the choices made by those who hold it. Humanity made their choice. The galaxy is still living with the consequences. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, 7 moon-sized ships drift silently, waiting for the day they might be needed again. Waiting and hoping that day never comes.